to show you today how I make all of my little 4 patches. You can see this huge pile of them. Some of them are pressed, some of them are not. These sit beside my sewing machine, and I just, whenever I use them as starters and enders, and in just a second I'll show you how I go about doing it on my sewing machine. But these are what it is that we're gonna make today. I'll get these back in the little bucket I keep them in. So what I've done to get my 4 patches started is, you can see I have stacked 4 pieces of fat quarters. These are just beautiful batiks that I have been gathering up for my quilt. And I pressed them and I starched them. I'm a big, or actually it's spray sizing. I'm big on pressing, big time on pressing. So once I've done that, I've lined up my edges very well. And I started out with a really nice straight edge. What I did was I took my ruler, I lined up the bottom of my fold on a line. Let's see if I can find a good one here to show you. I've lined it up, and then I have taken my longest ruler and used my cutting mat as my guideline to cut it straight. So I'm going to take and I'm going to make a 1 1/4 inch slice. They seem to be off a little bit right there. So I'm going to make a 1 1/4 inch cut so that I can make my next set. So here's a 1 1/4 inch cut. And here are my beginning pieces. So now I'm going to take that, set that aside. And remember, we're making 4 patches, so I need to do a strip of background. Now my background strip that you can see here now is a really light color. So we've got a huge amount of contrast here. It's very, very scrappy, so I'm not trying to match anything. I'm going to, this is a piece of fabric that is folded in half twice, so it's by the width of the fabric. And I'm going to make 1 cut. 1 cut will be enough for all 4 of these. So I'll make a single cut, and then I'm going to end up cutting these in half, because remember, this is a fat quarter, so it's half of the width of the fabric. This is a full one, so it's a full width. So I'll be able to cut it in half and then have more. So I'm going to do this one by 1 1/4. And my 1 1/4 is a generous full 1 1/4 because I'm going to be squaring these up at the end. No matter what, I'm going to square them up when I get all done. So there's my one. This one will match with this one. And I'm going to cut a couple more only because I've got more behind me that I need to do. So this time I'm going to go out to 2 1/2 because 1 1/4 and 1 1/4 is 2 1/2. And I'm going to make another cut, and then I'm going to back it down to 1 1/4 and make another cut. Now I could have gone out another 1 1/4 to what it would have been 3 1/4, I think. But anyhow, I could have gone out another one, and I chose not to. I'm gonna, only because sometimes when you do too much cutting in a row, if you're picking up the ruler and moving the ruler, you have a tendency of maybe getting things off a little bit. So I'm going to cut one more strip. I'm going to add that to my pile. Now I'm going to put this one aside. And I'm going to grab my other print fabric because I have some more behind me. So here's my next stack. You can see I've already cut these. I cut these earlier because I've already made some of them. But after I did it, I got to thinking I really should be showing you guys how I do this. So here I am lining it up again on my mat. And I'm just going to cut one of these strips. And again, I'm doing a full, generous 1 1/4 inch strip because I'm going to need to square these up later. So I'm going to fold this one, whoops, put this one aside, and I've got one more to do. I'm going to add that to my batch. I really do like starching my fabric beforehand when I press it, only because I think it keeps it together very, very well. And it gives it a little bit of body so that it doesn't move around a whole lot. And I actually, when I starched these, I did them, I put one piece down on my pressing board, sprayed it, let it sit for a minute, then I pressed it. Then I set a second piece of fabric on top of that, and I pressed that, putting sizing on it in between. Sometime I'll do a little video that shows you how I go about starching or putting sizing on these. Okay, so at this point we have got quite a few. I'll get them opened up for you. Quite a few 1 1/4 inch strips. And I have some more. And you can see there's 2 layers here. And I need to cut them in half. So I'm going to stack these together. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and cut my end so that I really only have one piece. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 of these. And I definitely think I have more than that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 4 more. So I need to do another strip. Unfold this, line it up again and make sure that I'm good and straight. I'm not twisting around. And I'm going to cut 2 so that I've got an extra one. Just because, let's see, I'm going to get 2 out of each one, so I do need 2 more. So here we go. I'm going to open these up. I'm going to clip my ends again, just sticking my scissors through and just cutting them. Alright, so now I have 2 piles. I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew them together all the way down. So I've got my 2 piles, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the entire process this time, but what I would normally do is I would put these 2 strips next to my sewing machine, and as I'm sewing, I just would sew a strip. So let's say I got to the end of a row on a quilt, And I would either use my little plug. I can show you one. Well, actually I can't because it's underneath the sewing machine. So I would either use my little plug or one of these. Because I have these strips to make up, I'll use one of these strips and I'll just sew all the way to the end, and I'll leave it sit there underneath the presser foot until I'm ready to go again. So, on to the next step. So most of us, if you don't know where your 1/4 inch mark is on your foot, a great help is a 1/4 inch foot. I've got number 37, which is for a Bernina, because that's what I sew on, is a Bernina. And I know that if I want a scant 1/4 inch, I put my presser foot down, and I'm not going to see the fabric here. For me, that's my scant 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to sew the two pieces together, and I'm just going to do a nice even and as straight as I can 1/4. I'm not back stitching, I'm not securing, I'm just stitching right straight down, and I am going to use my needle down feature. Just stitching right straight down and making sure that I'm keeping my pieces lined up. Once I've done that, the whole reason why I'm doing this is because I'm out of enders and starters. What I would do here now is put in one of my 4 patches that I'm sewing together, but I'll show you that in a minute. What I do next is I'm going to take this over to the ironing board, and I'm going to first set my seam by pressing it. And then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to press the seam to the dark. And I will be using my strip stick to do the pressing. You can see I've sewn this together. And I'm going to take 2 of them. I'm not going to pay any attention to their colors, whether or not they match, anything like that. And I'm going to take them and put them right sides together. And you're going to see they nestle right together in that seam very, very nicely. So I've got my 2 together. The next thing that I'm going to do is take one of my little rulers, and I am going to deal with a little bit of a smaller one this time. And I'm going to line these up on one of my lines on my board. I'm going to take my ruler, and I am just going to shave off this end here a little bit. And then I'm going to start cutting it. Now, I'm not going to cut more than 2.5 at a time because I don't want to disrupt my fabric too much. So I'll go out to 2.5. I'm taking this line right here and I'm lining that up on my sewing line. That's my center. I know I'm snuggled in real good and tight. So I'm going to take this, lining it up there, and I'm going to cut 2.5. Then bring my ruler back and cut 1 1/4. And again, I'm lining up on my sewn line. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire pile over to my sewing machine, just like this. They're going to sit there. But when I'm going to go to sew these together, I'm going to start here and sew down, always making certain that my flat part goes underneath the presser foot first. And what that does is a couple of things. Number one is I can make sure that my seam is flat. And number two, it takes this top piece and pushes it right, my presser foot pushes it right against the bottom piece. So that what happens is I tend to get much, much nicer seams. And I'll show you it. So here's my nice little 4-patch. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to show you. I sewed it this way under the presser foot. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to open it up. If I can get it, they're tiny pieces. And I'm just going to split it apart. Just like that. And what happens is a couple of those little threads come out. But look at, I get this nice little teeny tiny 4-patch in the center. And my seam lays really nice and flat. So I can press this and set it aside. And there's one of my 4-patches all done. I'm going to cut up my strips. I'll set these over next to my sewing machine. And then as I need a starter or ender, I'll have a 4-patch done. And in no time at all, I'll be ready to put the strips together on my quilt.